Here.
We're live.
We're live. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to sign in real quick to see who's out there. For whatever reason, the chat feature does not seem to work great through Google here. Typically, I only can see it through the actual YouTube page. So let's see who we already have on. Maurice is already on here. Awesome. Mr. Gretzky, that comic guy. Deadpool 2323. Wow, he hasn't been on in a while. Hello, welcome everybody.
Good to see Aaron again.
Yeah, I think some people's jobs and things, yickety yakety. I think some people's jobs get in the way of their true love.
They get in the way of our show.
Yeah, can't you all just rearrange your lives so that you can be here and watch us every week?
Because this show is so riveting.
It is. It's edge of your seat cliffhangers week to week. Well, I didn't know if I was going to because I'm feeling sleepy this evening, but our unofficial sponsor, I'm going to have to.
Oh, come on! We don't want you to fall. We don't want you to fall asleep during the broadcast.
If it isn't broken, don't fix it, right?
I guess, right.
Well, earlier today, just I'll kind of do a little song and dance here till we get everyone on. I went over to Mike's and we opened a box of CGC books. So
really, he never really, that's odd because he never does that.
I know he does. You know, it's odd that he has those, or because there's another 15. I can't take it yet. Look at that.
Cheers.
Oh, I love you. I have to wait for it to settle. Wow. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'll start without you then.
Nice. I'll say it was one of my favorite boxes I think we've ever opened.
Why's that?
I don't want to spoil it, but there's a lot of books in there that I still kind of want some of them, and some I have, and I just remember them fondly. And I remember when Mike got a lot of these too. I was with him at different cons and shows, and I can remember if I wasn't, you've been in on this too, where he'll send us a text and say, "Oh my gosh, look what I just got!" One of those ones.
That's right.
One of them in particular, you're going to go bonkers over, not because of the grade, but because I think you saw it before. It definitely was a landfill book, and you're not going to believe the way it turned out.
Is it an EC book?
No, it's an old Marvel, and then there's two old Marvels in there, and then the other one I know you know about as well. And that grade came back, I'm astounded by. So I was editing it before I came on. I didn't have a ton of time.
So why isn't Mike here now?
He had stuff going on. Mike runs a lot. He used to run more competitively. Now it's more just for fun and staying in shape. But when I left, he was headed to the track. So
I was about to say he's running around the neighborhood and all the snow that you have.
He runs indoor. There's a track near him that he goes to. So it's kind of his stress relief. But I think he said he was going to tune this in while he was doing that, possibly, or when he gets back. So. We got a bunch more people checking in. Knights of Old. Hey, I haven't watched his Timely Tuesday yet.
Yeah, I still have to see that one, the new one.
Comic Book Brother, there he is.
Knights of Old recently got a Golden Age beauty.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something else that he shared, and I don't want to spoil it if it's going to be in his video. Something he's been working on for years, actually. And hopefully he does a video on it. If he doesn't, it involves Wonder Woman. But
I think that's the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Sleepy Reader, hello. I see Christopher Joy's here. I see who else? Oh, I missed somebody else. I can't pronounce it. HIA something or other. Helash. Oh, it's gone. I'll have to scroll back down. Metarog's there.
Hey,
Metarog, you actually in Mike in my video today. It's not up yet. It'll be up tomorrow or later this evening. There's a book in there that we mentioned you in. It's kind of funny, everyone. Chris Winsky, hello. So that was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I don't know if some of you saw the promo that I put up yesterday. I talked with John, DrVonChilla. He gave us the topic for tonight, or one of the topics for tonight. We were very excited about Anthony I, and a little bit of behind the scenes. We planned it. We talked about what we were going to do, but John woke up this morning, chills, cold. It sounds like to me he got the flu.
That's what I had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he just sounds like that's warmed over. So, John, if you're watching, I hope you are relaxing. Don't drink, but don't drink beer. And try to recuperate quickly. Obviously, we'll still be here. It isn't the end of the world.
Don't go on any long walks.
yeah, by yourself. So yeah, so hopefully, he's doing better and everything like that. But we found that out, I think, this later this afternoon. So I changed the promo title a little bit, and if you're just you two, it's just going to be us two. You guys are going to get to look at us for an hour talking. Yeah. Anthony and I already had the other topic that Anthony had brought up, and we can get into that in a little bit. So freezing cold here this week, unseasonably cold in March. Last night it got down to 8 degrees.
It's pretty cold over here too.
Cold, and I like the phrase "ass ripping cold," and that's what it is. It's the cold wind that hits you, and I don't care what kind of coat you have on. It rips right through into your soul and chills you.
It goes straight up your ass too.
Yeah, no, it totally does. It's a numbing cold. So,
yeah.
Anyway, one other thing too that I don't know if you're watching, but I have been. I don't like the angle of this. I have to do something about this. I feel like I'm up on a pulpit talking down to everybody. Yeah, have you been watching Black Mirror at all?
No, I have not been. I've seen a few episodes, but I haven't been keeping up with anything.
Yeah, I really have enjoyed this series. Some of them aren't great, but some of them are very, very good. They're very reminiscent of Creepshow, actually.
Mm. Yeah, they do have that Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, almost Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. You know what? The show that was in the 80s, Tales from the Dark Side.
Yes.
I think they're closer to that. And then they have that British because most of them are British actors, and there's some that are American, but I've watched a few that are really, really good. I think it's called Metalhead. I think it's the one I like the best so far.
Yeah, my friend showed me a couple of those episodes, and I enjoyed it, but I never went back to it.
Yeah, it's there's 4 seasons. The first 3 seasons, I think, are only 3 or 4 episodes. Season 4 is 6, and the last one I really enjoyed. It's a Star Trek kind of parody almost. And
wait, I think I saw that one.
That was really good. And the kid that's the lead in it, he was in Breaking Bad. He was also in Fargo. He played the butcher in Fargo.
Okay.
You've seen him around. He's a very odd face. You know if you see him. I don't know his name, but he was very, very good in it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I saw that.
Everybody out there, if you haven't seen it, check out some Black Mirror. It's on Netflix. You can binge it. They're like mini movies. They're only like 50 minutes to an hour. At the most, so. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Okay.
Oh, that's lubing up my gears.
So let's see how well these gears move.
Yeah. Let's see that. Let's see who else we got in here. It looks like most of the same people.
The regulars.
Most of the usual suspects, I like to call them.
Okay. So
Todd, though, where's Todd? Todd's not really in here. Todd Hobeck, I think his name is. Anyway, I watched a ton of videos this last weekend too. I was doing stuff around the house. We painted, trim, and stuff like that. So I kind of had it on as I was working. So I'm pretty well caught up. Anthony dropped a new video this afternoon, actually, or this morning. I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. It's a series I like, and I've been trying to I think talk about that a little bit on this chat. That you don't have to go out and get a $1,000 or $5,000 comic.
Nope.
Not everyone either wants to spend that much or can spend that much on, say, Amazing Fantasy 15, and plunk down $15,000-$20,000. So there's a lot of great books out there, and I guess it's kind of
under $50.
What we're going to talk about next.
Yeah. So a lot of those books. I'm probably going to come out with a part 6 in a couple of weeks. I'm going to release next week my indie video part 2. But it's true. There are a lot out there as I go through my collection. There are a lot out there. If you're into keys, if you're into collecting keys sometimes with quotes, cheaper books. Some of these could be found in dollar bins. Some of them could be bought off of my comic shop for like a few bucks. Yeah. You like that sort of stuff? You give it a shot. Give it a look. But a lot of stuff out there like that. You don't have to spend like hundreds of dollars on books to have a decent collection.
Yeah, I grabbed the box here that I have some of my favorite stuff, some of my favorite covers in.
Oh, I got stacks right here.
Yeah, in preparation for tonight. But Anthony kind of brought up a conversation or a question this week that I thought would be great for the show. and you can ask the question, Anthony.
Ah, okay. What does collecting mean to you? Like, what kind of does it have any special meaning for you?
Yeah.
And collecting, when I say the word collecting, it could be anything.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we would probably prefer to talk about comics for this broadcast, but
over either one of your shoulders, and you'll see you also collect other stuff. So
yeah, I think that's the way it is with most of us. Though those of us I see on Instagram, they'll show their Star Wars action figures, the ones that came out in the 80s, or they'll show their Pokemon cards or their Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So the point is, people collect other things other than comics. Usually, if you're collecting comics most of the time, not all the time, you're collecting something else or have collected something else.
And that got me into thinking too, is it a certain personality type that collects?
I do believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well, because even when I just think of, I like part of the hobby that I like so much, I think, is the organization of it. Like my workbench, my tools, my desk at work, my desk at home, they're usually very, very neat. I like things. I like a place for everything and everything in its place. And I think collecting really lends itself to that, especially early on, because I was such a completist collector. I really was I wanted that complete run. Like if I had 13, 14, 16, missing 15 would drive me crazy. I mean, I needed that book, and you get that pull. And sometimes I wasn't like a completist, like an entire series, but I like to complete runs. It seemed to be more for me, that I like runs more than anything. But I think you're right. I collected baseball cards, Star Wars cards, Matchbox cards when I was a little kid.
Would you say though that all the collecting that you've done over the years, what does that do for you though?
I've been thinking about this since.
What does it do for you? Okay, we all we could all talk about. Right, we all collect different things. I've collected cards. I remember when the Batman '89 movie came out, I collected those cards because the kids in school were. That's how I was introduced to Batman, and so forth. So, but what does it do for you though, Patrick?
Well, I thought about that, and it does a number of things for you. For one thing, growing up in the 70s, we didn't have internet. We didn't have a lot of things. So to a certain degree, I think collecting helps kill a lot of time. But at the same time, you don't just feel like you're just sitting watching TV, because when you're done and you're collecting, you've accumulated something in some type of fashion. You're not just willy-nilly buying anything. So I think to a large degree, at least for me, why I loved collecting, and I still do like to collect things, is you get that really good feeling of accomplishment when you're done.
Yeah.
I used to collect DVDs and CDs.
Yeah.
I still collect albums, LPs. And I think it's fun to have and to share with other people. I can remember people coming over, family members and friends coming over, and I had at probably one time 300-400 movies, so they could come over and borrow a movie. Same thing with a record album or a CD was the same way. So that was kind of fun, and I liked suggesting things to people and taking it over to maybe they never saw a movie before or read this book before. And I've gotten rid of giving away a lot of books, but at one point I probably had close to 500 books. So
how many books you have now, Patrick?
Comic books or just regular books?
Comic books.
Oh, comic books. I have 18 short boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, so what is this
collection?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got rid of 25 long boxes.
Let's see. You had one hell of a collection.
Yeah. Basically 74 through 93. Pretty much all Marvel complete.
That taps into that completist thing you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, but I lost that when I went out. When I left in '93, being a completist is ultimately what caused me to stop collecting. And
became too difficult to manage.
It's just where do you shut it off? It was to me, it became an all or nothing. I am very, very, either something is or it isn't. I'm not big on gray. I'm very black and white.
So you're the question.
Yeah, or Mr. A.
Is that who it is, Mr. A?
Mr. A is like
Mr. A is
only like even more refined, where there's just right and there's wrong, and if you're wrong, he's gonna do awful things to you. So I didn't even know that character till I watched Alan's video on Mr. A. If you haven't seen it, Strange Brain Parts, he did a great video on Mr. A. I had no idea it was Ditko. I had no,
Oh yeah.
yeah. It definitely was a social commentary series. So, and then cards was the same thing because I quit cards probably 89, 90, and that's when everybody started making cards, and it was no longer fun to collate and put a set together. There was all kinds of stars and foils and all that kind of stuff, and it ruined baseball cards for me. So I stopped collecting those, and just slowly I got out of all of it. But it gets down to like a very base level. There's a feeling that I get when I collect, and I feel like I've completed something that you get when you eat a large meal, if that makes any sense at all.
A feeling of satisfaction.
Yes, there's that
fullness.
Yeah, that fullness, that warm satisfaction.
That nourishment.
Yeah, maybe nourishing your brain, or you're scratching an itch. I think that's what it is, and I think I had the phantom limb itch, and that pulled me back in. Back in 2013, after 20 years of not collecting anymore.
What brought you back in, though? What really brought you back in? Like, what would you say? What made you decide to say, I'm going to start doing this again?
Well, obviously the movies kind of brought me back in a little bit. And I can remember going in and looking, because I kept everything in a closet, in a dark closet, they were all bagged and boarded in their little coffins, sleeping for 30 years or, 20, your better part of 20 years. And I started looking into them more and looking at them. And then I would get into, looking at them here and there. And then I started getting that feeling again. And when I first came back to collecting, I was nuts. I legitimately, because you're older, you have more disposable income, and it was so easy. There was no eBay when I quit. There was these janky shows at the mall where you'd have guys, or like the fireman exempt, hall or something like that. On eBay, you could go crazy. You could complete every run if you want to.
Oh yeah.
It's really just time and money a little bit, but most of the stuff you can pick up for $2-3. It's the biggest dollar bin in the world is eBay. I think the bigger part is I missed it. I missed collecting, and that of all the different things that I collected, I love comics the most, and that's why I came back. You never left, so why do you collect? I know how you got into it, but why do you collect? Because you collect a lot of things.
Yeah, I mainly collect, obviously, comics, as everyone knows, but people have an idea that I collect and play games. So sometimes it's not easy to play games, because James and all that stuff. There's just not enough time in the day, but I do try to make time to play them.
Yeah. You're different that way too, because I know a lot of people who play video games, but you more than, and they just accumulate them. So by virtue of just accumulating them, they have a collection. You specifically go out and you get games in certain platforms, and the cover art is important to you and all that stuff. You're definitely a different level than any of the other creators that I know of.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a completist when it comes to games, because that would be just crazy. Trying to complete a PlayStation collection while there's like 2,300 games. And I have a big collection back here, but I only have about 200. I would need, but when it comes to maybe completist, when it comes to games, like I'll collect for a certain company, like Working Designs. I love Working Designs. They're defunct now. But I love the working designs for the Sega Saturn and the Sega CD. I have all the working designs for Sega CD, but I'm missing one for Saturn. And it's only 6 for Saturn and maybe 4, I think. It's not this massive amount, like 30 or 40 games. But they're very expensive because everybody likes working designs games.
Did they get gobbled up by another company?
They just went out. Here's an example. They were famous for their box art. They would translate Japanese games that no American company would bring over to the States. They would translate them, that's Working Designs, and they would add pop culture references and humor that wasn't in the original Japanese, which made them endearing to their fans. And they would always have translation notes in the manual. They would talk about the problems they ran into and the changes they made and how they improved it and so forth. So they were really into their fans. And it was out of Working Designs, I think it was out of Washington, Washington State. But anyway, here's an example. This is a game called Pop Full Mail. Now, what the hell is Pop Full Mail? What the hell does that even mean?
Is that like a direct translation from the Japanese?
It's the name of the character. Her name is Mail.
Oh.
But yeah, you could see the foil on it. And this particular has to have the card that comes with it. And this one even has the receipt on when it was born, when it was purchased, and how much it was purchased for, and so forth. But this is an example of, working designs. They put a lot of quality into their games, and they're highly collectible and fun. Mainly role-playing games and so forth. So that's why I collect working designs when it comes to being a completist. But other than that, I just pick games that I like and so forth and so on. But that's what I collect other than comics. I don't collect action figures, or I used to collect cards, as people may know. I enjoyed it back in the early 90s, but I never went back to it.
One of my favorite card collections, and I think I'm still missing one or two of them, is the Leave It to Beaver cards. I worked right before I worked at Kodak for a long time, but before then I worked at a delicatessen, and every single shift I would get 1 or 2 packs of cards, and I would go through them, and just whatever was in. I got hooked on getting these damn Leave It to Beaver cards, and I don't think I've ever finished them. And I know that they're in a box here, and I came across them when we moved. It was all my cards. So I think there was some old Star Wars in there, and there was Leave It to Beaver, and all these weird TV shows. I think Gunsmoke or maybe Rifleman or one of those was in there too. But I think once I get my comic area set up down there, or it's really going to be a hobby area, because I have artwork and I have a lot of baseball cards. I have a few statues, things like that. Some of my favorite toys I want to get out, some of the Migos that I have, and then obviously comic books. But I miss my old comic room. I don't know, for those of you that don't have one, once you have one, it's so hard to not have it, because it's all your stuff in one place. You know where all your books are. I kept all my albums in there. I had my turntable in there. I had, it was perfect. I had a little TV in the corner that I could have on and keep, sports going on. Normally this time of year, I try to watch a lot of basketball, college basketball, so I know what's going on for the tournament. And I miss being able to sit in my recliner, reading an old Treasury and watching a basketball game with the sound down or something like that. So, but getting back to the question, what do you get out of it? What do you get out of collecting?
I get a sense of satisfaction. I've always liked to collect. From what I remember, growing up, they're really from what I was exposed to. I don't remember any comic book collectors that, or at least I would talk to. I'm sure they were out there, or anything like that. And even games when I was growing up, it wasn't the cool thing to do. Collect games and so forth and so on, or collect comics. So you have all this stuff today where people are geek pride and all that stuff. We didn't have that.
No.
Or at least when I was back then, it was shunned.
Yeah.
At least from what I can remember.
Yeah, I always hear people talk about that, and maybe I was just lucky. I never felt that about comics. Now, when I was in high school, I'd say from the time I was a sophomore till after I graduated high school, I didn't bring up the fact that I love comic books, I guess, because I kind of had a little span there where I wasn't buying stuff regularly.
Yeah, but it's getting back to that feeling of comfort it gave me, because I didn't really have too much in common with anybody. From what I remember, a lot of other people were interested in different things, and I just wasn't interested in that. And and not to sound nasty or anything, but I found a lot of people quite boring, and maybe they found the same. Maybe they found the same thing. They felt that I was boring too. Who knows? Whatever. But because of that, I kind of withdrew and went into my own world. I'll say it a couple times. I've said it in many of my videos. I'm usually in my own world, almost maybe in a somewhat autistic way. I'm just so focused in my world. Sometimes I'm oblivious to other people, what other people are saying to me, or what other people want and so forth. It's not because I don't care. It's just I'm just so used to being in that world.
Yeah, you're not
stemming from my early days in collecting and so forth. But anyway, that feeling of comfort originates. I could remember watching a movie late night a horror movie or something. And when I was a kid, I would have my action figures around because I would just finish playing them. And it just created this level of comfort. And I remember I'd be watching a late night movie as I was getting a little older, and I had a couple of my comics that I just bought during the day at a local con around me because I was looking at them again. And it was almost like this feeling of safeness.
Yeah.
Safe space before there was a safe space.
Yeah.
And that's how I equate it. And that whenever I do that, it's not necessarily nostalgia. It's almost like that comfort feeling.
Yeah, you get to retreat back there.
Yes. I go back into my own world.
Yeah. No, to a large degree, that's why I did read comics, why I read books so much and got into television and movies. It is just an escape. And, sometimes it's not that I ever had a horrible hard life or something like that. I didn't have parents that hit me or anything, and I didn't. We weren't wealthy, but it wasn't like I was starving to death or anything. But it was a way of escaping sometimes, and I still like that about comics. I still like that about books, and I really like it about cinema. Movies and TV. When I go to the theater and those lights go down and that big light, lighted screen comes on, I completely block everything else out. Short of a freight train busting through the wall, you can't break my concentration. So I think that's a part of it too. Is that safe kind of? It's hard to explain.
It is. It's like I was saying with watching the movie.
Opening the comic when you used to get it, I'd run up that gravel driveway and run back down, take the brown paper off it, and opening that book and seeing that splash page, and then reading who wrote it and who illustrated it and all that. It just that feeling, that euphoric feeling, and you got it every time I opened the cover. Every time.
Yeah, it gives
you the interiors. Then it was sadness.
But it does. That's what it does for me. Yeah. It put me in a place of comfort.
Yeah.
Where I didn't have to worry about whatever else was going on or so forth. And that's what it meant to me. It's just that simple. And for those out there that understand some of what I'm saying or understand all of what I'm saying, the feeling, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
And it's not always just about getting the most expensive book. And sometimes it goes into that, right? Because sometimes there's a level of prestige that comes with collecting. But those who you have this or you have that sometimes is part of it, but that's later on. But there is a certain sense of comfort.
Yeah. I think the other reason too that I love this hobby in particular so much is you can evolve, and there's so much out there, and there's so many different directions you can go. You can be a hero, in the heroes. You can be in the westerns. You can be in the horror, pre-code horror if you want to. You can only read Bronze Age. Maybe you only read Bronze Age books. Around 77, 78, you just said, I'm done. I'm not reading anymore. 67 to 77 is my sweet spot, but a lot of it just has to be that's when I was most active in reading. But I think now when I look back, sometimes I've come to realize, and I think I made a few videos about this, that you can't recapture that nostalgia. You can't buy somebody else's nostalgia. But what you can get is you can get that feeling again. And I think that's why so many of us hang on to our old books. I know, I call it my landfill collection. It's 2 little short boxes full of books, and they're rough and they're tattered, and they'll be with me forever. I'll never let those go. And I've stopped trying to replace them. Like I was trying to get, pristine, beautiful copies of them, and I don't do it anymore. I like those old ones. They're still readable. I remember them. There's history there. Some of them still have sand in them. I think I've told that story about the sand pile I read in. They can't be duplicated. So that's my personal nostalgia.
Yeah. There's a couple books in my collection. I always upgrade now.
Yeah.
And there are some books that even though I may upgrade the book, some of them, not all of them, I won't sell the book that I've had since 1993. Some of them I have. Some of them I have, and I could not care less about. But then there are just some that have a different meaning, like the Amazing Spider-Man 300 I have.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, or the Punisher one. Well, I wouldn't want to sell that one anyway. But I mean, they're really tied to things.
Yeah.
Those particular books, and whenever I look at them, I'm brought back to that era. I can remember the night or the day that I got them, and it's because of that copy.
Yes,
it's that particular copy. I could always get rid of it and get another one, good, one that's better or worse, but it's not the same. It's not my copy that comes from that day.
No, and I mean, you remember that story, and you'll remember how that was tied to. And I have a few things like that. There's certain books that my dad would bring me, and growing up, I didn't see him very much. So when I did see him, those happy feelings are tied to some of these books. Like he got me the Spider-Man, Superman surgery, and I got it. It was already wailed on because it had been out for months, and he must have found it. There's a place called Worldwide News here, and it was a rough copy, but I'll keep that copy forever because I remember we got that, and me and my brother, we read it instantly because it just blew our minds. That Spider-Man and Superman were in the same comic together. It's crazy. It's madness, So there's books like that, and I know exactly what you mean. As you're talking, I was flashing the covers in my head of books that I remember, specific places that I got them, and I'll never let them go because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly the way I feel. I remember that first batch of books that I got from that guy Gilbert.
Oh yeah.
And X Factor 5 and 6, X-Men 221 and 266 were in that, and I'm like, I still have them to this day, and I'm like,
I don't remember. Did you lost touch with him? Did you ever try to find him?
I lost touch with him decades ago, and I think I tried looking him up on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did. I didn't see him though, so I don't know whatever happened to him. I mean, maybe I should look a little harder.
That would make a great video if you ever found him.
It would be. I mean,
you could take those books and bring them to him so he could see if he remembered. Recommending them.
Yeah. I hope he's all right. I mean, I know when I was 13, he was 27, so
14 years on you. He's still a young guy.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the weather break. I'm so excited to go drive around, and I'm going to take all these books with me that I specifically remember where I bought them when I was a kid, and we'll see. I think only one of the places is still open, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I don't think any of the places where I used to get my comics are still open. I mean,
is the store still there?
No. I used to go to Woodbridge Mall. That store, that Heroes World, closed down. Where I used to get my weekly stuff, it was by an old veteran that opened up a shop. That's gone. That's like now a food mart.
The building's still there.
The building? Oh yeah, the building's still there. Same color and all that stuff. Yeah. It wasn't painted or anything like that, or the bricks weren't painted. Still there, but that store's gone. I should walk in there just to see if I could get a feeling. But I don't think Gilbert's store is there anymore. That was the Hudson Mall for those that are in the New Jersey area. Hudson Mall. I forget the name of the place. I don't think it's there anymore. I even forget the name of the place. Comic Attitudes or whatever it was called.
So everyone on tonight, I'd love to read what you all think about this. The chat's going by so fast. It's very large paragraphs. It's more than just the hey, what's up, and all that kind of stuff. I'm getting a reverb, Anthony. Did something get unplugged?
Should I unplug and plug it back in?
Yeah, try that.
Okay. How's it now? How's it now?
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Anyway, everyone put in the comments because I'd love to read that afterward. And anything anyone asks, I'll try to answer in here. But I see by the big clock on the wall, we only have a little bit more time, so we should probably roll into the stuff.
Yeah. It was a good topic. It was a good topic. It easily could have taken the whole show. But let's move on.
Yes. Okay. So DrVonChilla brought up something that he thought that would be fun to talk about was being a cover collector, and specifically a classic cover collector. And I don't know about you, but when he first said that, I didn't want to talk too much about it. But for me, there are a lot of covers that to me are classic, and they're not necessarily valuable, but they're growing up a collector mostly in the 70s. They're very iconic images for me, and I can pull up one here that is one. This cover right here.
Oh wow, that's a great cover.
Yeah, 15. It's this. When I was a kid, I just remember that the year this came out, I saw this book constantly. I think it was in an ad too. So when they would have an ad for a book, you'd see it. If you collected 5, 6, 7 titles, you'd see it 5, 6, 7 times in a month. So it would get burned in your brain. But just something about that, I love the whole centering of it, just the very simple green gradient background. He's getting away from that bird only to fall on those thorns. And then it's right in the middle of the whole Panthers Rage storyline too. So just one of my favorites. And to me, this is a classic cover. Now you can get this book for probably $10-15, and this one's in screaming probably like a 9.4. But you can get it in probably less than $10. But to me, this is what I thought of as a classic cover. Obviously, you have others, but that's the first one. One of the first ones that came to mind for me.
Well, for me, what I considered a classic cover for my collecting, it may not be a classic cover for everyone else. I picked books that I thought are classic for this, that, and the other reason. Remember, I always talked about EC and all that stuff. I started with EC, but what made me a long-term collector was when I got into the superhero books, and it started with this.
I was going to bring that. I got that one in here. That's too funny.
This is my very first superhero book, my very first X-Men book, anything. My very first superhero book that I purchased. I mean, technically that Batman adaptation of the movie in '89 was the first, but that sometimes it doesn't even count because that didn't even make me a collector. That didn't make me want to go buy more books. But when I said I want to start collecting these things, I really want to get into superheroes. I liked that cartoon X-Men and their adaptation of Days of Future Past. It was a comic book. Let me get that. And here it is. And it is I think it is a classic cover. This cover has been swiped many times.
I was going to say, covers that get swiped, I think you can consider classics.
And this is not my original copy. I sold that one off to get this higher grade copy, like your Blood Jungle Action. This is probably a 9.4 plus. Beautiful. But just the colors and just seeing this, as I can imagine being an X-Men fan back then. I guess this was 1980, 79, 80 when this came out, and picking up this issue and like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it's exactly. I got it in the mail. It was one of those. That would be one of the ones that I got at the end of the driveway. And I pull the brown paper off, and I look at it, I'm like, what in the hell? Wolverine's got white cyber. What's going on here?
When all these characters are dead, and then you start reading it, and you're like, what the hell? And you're like, what? And you're reading it, you're like, Magneto's hanging out with them in the future? Well, you know, and then it goes back to Kitty Pryde and all that other stuff. But it was really an intense story.
Yeah.
And, for me, because I always had trouble reading, and I was saying to myself when I first got these, I said to myself, all right, let me really stick with this and let me read it, because sometimes, like I said, my attention just doesn't. Takes a while. I stuck with it, and it.
And what's amazing is that's a two book story arc. But looking back on it, it feels like it was so much more. I think of some of the new things that they do now, and there's 7, 8. Books in a row, and they don't have anywhere near the gravity or weight of that book.
Exactly. If this would have come out today, this would have been like a 12-part miniseries, and it wouldn't have had any of the gravity that you just mentioned that these two had back in the 80s. They wouldn't have had the talent behind the storytelling, and among other things, the feeling. They wouldn't have had it. It would probably would have had some sort of political thing behind it too.
You can only do. I think a lot of it too, and it's not that it's unfair. It's just the way it is. You can only do certain things so often. Like that book in particular. And another one that I'm thinking of that I'm going to be doing a video on, so I don't want to wreck that. But it was the first time that they killed major characters, but in such a way that they didn't really die, but you could still get that spiciness of them being dead.
Exactly. Yeah, they teased you a little bit because they're never going to kill Storm and and the others. But here we could like show it to you and shock you, and like, oh man, And we could even say that in this possible future, they are dead. So
correct. And it wasn't a what if book. It means this happened or could have happened if they didn't do what they did.
Exactly. So it had a lot to that book.
It was so well woven. I love that whole storyline. But that's inside the cover, so I guess we kind of broke our rule there. I'll go next. The next one I have, and you've showed this one a number of times. I love this one. It's got all my favorite things in it. It's got a monster, it's got a moon, and it's got a lantern.
A lantern. There you go.
It's got all of these. I wanted this book forever, and then I finally got my mitts on it, and it's just a great comic. And
that is
again, obviously 400's worth way more than this. There's others that in the Detective Comics right around this time with Neil Adams are way more valuable. But to me, it doesn't. That's just a great cover. I mean, the look on Batman's face is true fear. I mean,
That's also the second appearance of Man-Bat, correct?
Yeah, yes. So that I don't know, just it's another one of those. It's just an awesome book.
Yeah, I've always liked Man-Bat ever since I saw him on the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
I
it's one of my favorite arcs. I think I said it a few weeks ago. If they did a movie just on those 2 episodes, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And for Man-Bat fans out there, if you played the Batman Arkham Knight game that came out a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's in that game. There's a cutscene where Batman, you get to a certain part of the game and Man-Bat's going to appear. There's a certain part of the game where it goes into a cutscene where Batman's climbing a building. Then all of a sudden, as he gets to the top of the building, Man-Bat's face goes right in and screams at him at the camera. And you're like, oh shit, is this?
You're not expecting that.
It's like, no, it's like it has that Resident Evil moment with the dogs bursting through the windows. It's like, oh. And then the whole time, you don't have to go after him right away, but you see him flying around the city. And you could choose to go after him and start that story arc by wrestling him down and trying to inject him to get him back to being who he really is. But it's, Man-Bat's great. It's really great.
Great. So what do you got?
Now here's one that I think the good old doctor might like, and I have to say this is classic. And it's something I've shown on my channel many, many times before. And here we go.
Oh.
I love this cover. I love this cover so much. I know Spider-Man's getting smacked and all that stuff, and there are some complaints about it, but I love the Gil Kane art.
Yeah.
I like the creepiness of Morbius, even though he looks kind of goofy with the, but I guess it was the 70s, and you have like that sort of style. It's late 60s, early 70s. But I just love the feel of that old mansion type horror movie, Universal monster feel, because that's exactly what I got from reading this. We go Universal, and I have another one I'll show that reminds me of Universal Monsters. I love books that have that monster type feel to it, and that monster type feels like a Frankenstein monster or a mummy or a vampire. Once again, it all goes back to me as a kid sitting in the dark watching the black and white Night of the Living Dead and just being so creeped out from it. And hearing noises from behind, my parents were upstairs. My sister was upstairs. And I'm all by myself downstairs with the basement right down there. You just never, as a kid watching it, it makes me feel that way. And also late night, those old Universal monster movies would come on, like Frankenstein, like 1 in, 2 in, Saturday morning.
The Black Lagoon, I love that. I still love that movie.
That's the one I never saw.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Never saw that one.
I have all of them on DVD.
That's the one I never saw. I saw all the others.
Yeah.
I like the Phantom of the Opera. I like that. I enjoyed obviously the Mummy and Dracula. Frankenstein, I think, was my favorite though.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Wolfman meets the Mummy. I
don't think I saw that one though.
Yeah. They did that where they all met each other and they all fought and all that. It was kind of cool.
Because I know they were trying to do that dark universe thing, where they bring all the Universal monsters together. Like,
it handled it badly. And
it wasn't handled well.
No.
I would like to see the Universal monsters fight against the modern day monsters.
Yeah.
And see, like you have Dracula and Frankenstein on one side, and then you see him up against characters like Freddy Krueger and the Xenomorph on the other. It'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I saw the trailer for Hellboy. I don't know if you've seen the new trailer.
I haven't, no.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
I think the guy that they got to play him, he's in Stranger Things.
Yeah, he's the cop.
Yeah, he's the cop. I don't know. It looked pretty good. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
When's it come out?
I want to say March, maybe April. I guess I missed the point of seeing the trailer because they always flash the day.
So what do you got? What's next on your list?
This is my second, I guess, but I didn't put it together that it was the second one. until I looked at it when I pulled this, but I remember this as being my first X-Men book.
Mm.
X-Men Giant Size #2.
What is that a reprint of? Is that
reprints? I think of 56,
57?
57, and 58.
The Neil Adams run with the Sentinels Return.
Yeah, but this is a Gil Kane cover.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got great Neil Adams art on the inside, and I love the Sentinels. They're one of my favorite villains. I hated the way they were handled in the movie.
Yeah.
I like them big and clunky, and you can hear the servos going, and I want to see their big bucket heads. And I don't know, I just the squeal noise they make when they would get killed, I think was great.
Yeah, the Sentinels are definitely one of the best villains that the X-Men have ever come across. And although I did enjoy Days of Future Past, they weren't the Sentinels that I think we all
I'm not saying that I didn't like that movie. Just that I didn't like the way that these characters were specifically handled. But I just look at the action on this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's everywhere. It's wall to wall, and there's no background. It's just gradient color.
Almost like a Golden Age panel.
Yeah,
where they just have.
I love this cover. I could look at it forever.
Looks like it's a pretty high grade book too.
Yeah, this one is, and I do have my original, and I had to replace it because I read it so much as a kid, it completely fell apart. So,
that came out in '75, right, Patrick?
Yeah, 1975.
Like the end of '75, right?
Yes, I remember it being warm when I got it, but I don't know. That could
Okay.
Yeah,
because Giant Size came out in '75.
I thought didn't most Giant Size and annuals come out in the summer?
I don't remember. That I don't know.
I'm sure there's a historian watching, and one of them can fill us in on what's going on. What's your next one?
All right, now this one I know is not the caliber of some of the books that we've showed or probably will show before the show's out. But the reason why I chose it because I still think it's a swipe of one of the probably most infamous Joker covers of all time.
Oh.
Now this is not necessarily a classic book. Detective Comics is 866, but it is a swipe, and it's the closest thing that I'm ever going to get to having Detective 69.
Yeah, I know what one you're talking about.
Yes, this Walt Simonson drew this cover, and his rendition of the classic Detective 69. I think that's a classic cover. It's another one of the covers where the Joker seems to be coming out of a lamp. They did that. They did that with Detective 69, which is a swipe of this, and they did it with Batman 49, which is one I have, and it always produced good results. Whenever the Joker,
I remember his face on that cover in particular is super evil looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very like mentally deranged evil.
Yes.
He's getting pleasure out of what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think anybody, like any Golden Age or Joker cover collector would agree that Detective 69 is one of them. I mean, there are plenty of them that are great with the Joker, but I think Detective 69 is definitely one of the pinnacles of Joker Golden Age covers. And that's why I chose this one in particular, a modern take on it.
My next one is one of my first books I got when I came back to the hobby. And it's one that I always remembered the cover to. And I thought when I came back, this is where I want to start. Now, he was introduced in this title, the next issue. But to me, this is where it all started for him. And that's Captain America in Tales of Suspense 58. And
it's a cool cover.
It's just so cool to see, and it's a common trope now for heroes to be fighting. But back then it really wasn't a thing. So it's just a great cover, great Kirby drawing.
Yeah. He always did Captain America and Iron Man. To be quite frank, very well.
It's just I love that cover. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's
who knew that so many years later in a movie that actual scene was kind of played out.
Yeah, and it was done very well too.
Yeah, I like the way that was handled.
Very well. For me, the next one is one again that something I showed. This is my favorite cover.
Oh yes, Brandon Ingalls.
My introduction to this cover came when I was looking at the reprints, and I saw this cover as an advertisement in one of the reprints, the
Mhm.
Gladstone reprints. And I said to myself, Jesus, look at this. And it said Ghastly
Yeah.
underneath. And I was
Yep.
like, that certainly is ghastly looking. But I didn't know it meant that was the handle for Graham Ingalls at the
Yeah.
time.
His pen name.
When years later, I said, this is definitely a book I must have in my collection. And I managed to get a pretty good grade. It's
Yeah, that's
probably about a
really nice
7.0.
copy.
And just looking at the horror in the characters' faces and just to see look at the moon in the background, how it just shines almost
Oh,
like
it's
in a
Silver
fog.
Moon, and it's a lamppost, but it's kind of a lantern.
Yeah. Yeah, they
And
got right
you
here.
got a
Yeah,
monster in it. You got a zombie in there, so
that's right.
it's got
And
my
the zo-
trifecta.
and the zombie's so like messed up looking. I mean,
He's
look at his
trembling.
arm, for
Yeah,
God's
look at
sake.
him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he looks like he can barely move.
Yeah, and they're running like
Yeah.
the
Well, I
thing looks
think
like he's gonna fall apart as he's running after them.
when I was a kid, the mummy always bothered me. But then when I got to thinking about it as an adult, that guy's been dead for 1,000 years and he's moving. So yeah, that is horrifying.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're a little kid, you're thinking, he can't do it. He's not Godzilla. He's not going to wreck a city. But looking
Be
at
fine.
it as an adult rationally, you're like, that guy's been dead for 2,000 years. He has no organs. How's he moving? It's horrifying. So my next one is another one that I love, and it has to do because I love the animated series so much. Um, it's a character that I don't think they've explored very much in comics, or until more recently. He kind of was always a joke character, and I think a lot of it's because of the '66 series. But it's Mr. Freeze.
Oh,
I love this character. I love his motivation for why he does what he does. I just think it's such a menacing. This cover is just great, where you see Batman in the reflection of his dome on his head, because he has to keep everything cold for himself. I love this cover.
it wasn't until the animated series where that character was taken seriously.
Yeah, they rewrote him, and he's just
He,
so cool.
he was just a joke character for years. He got a spot on the '66 series, which gave birth to his name, Mr.
Yeah.
Freeze, because he was Mr. Zero before that.
Yeah.
The one time he showed up, and it wasn't until that animated
He's
series.
hokey too. His first, appearance was very hokey in the comic.
Yeah, it was. It was really stupid. But when you saw him in that show, it was just the way the lines, the way Michael Ansara delivered those lines for that character was just like, whoa, this is really good.
And it had the garbliness to his voice. It just was so good.
Yes. My next book, this will be another EC. This is a book I haven't showed yet. This will be shown again in comic book haul number 32 next month. But since we're talking about favorite covers, yes, I got a special preview here, everybody. I've said before with the Morbius cover, I love the Universal Monster type look on books. This is closer to a Universal Monster look, rather. War Against Crime 11. This is the second Vault Keeper, but take a look at this cover with the mummy. Talked about a mummy a few moments ago, and the light illuminating his shadow against the sarcophagus.
It's done so well. The lighting actually is done so well on that.
Yes, and it's a typical EC. This is a typical cover for EC. A guy's talking like he doesn't believe in mummies, or there's a vampire around. I wonder where he is, and they're usually right behind the guy. So it's that sort of thing here. But I just love the way the mummy's drawn.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first EC horror book.
And what's funny is it's called War Against Crime,
but you see here they changed it to horror, and they completely abandoned the crime formula. I mean, there's some crime elements, but they just full blown first horror cover, I should say, by EC. First horror book was Vault 12, but I love this cover. I could look at this cover all day. The colors, everything. It's a fabulous book.
That's great. Well, my next one is and I think I showed it last week or the week before. It's one that I've gotten. I think it's a key, very important book, and it's aptly titled Turning Point. It's Spider-Man 121. This is a valuable book, but it's really just very, very iconic. It's the first time they really kind of killed somebody, and shockingly, I think.
Yes.
I've spoken to older collectors that stopped reading Spider-Man right after this issue. and they never went back, which is amazing.
But not a good time to stop because a few issues later they introduced the Punisher. But
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, she stayed really. She stayed dead for a long time.
Yeah. Then they did that whole Rickon thing of.
Yeah, well, 149, 150, 151, the original Clone Saga thing, but
that's that a lot of people who lived vicariously through Spider-Man and was dating Gwen Stacy, a lot of young teenage boys. When that happened, I think it bothered a lot of.
I think you're right, and I think maybe Batman would be the only other one. But I've met so many collectors over the years where they only read Spider-Man. They only read and collected Spider-Man. They didn't get into any of the other characters. And I think Batman a little bit is like that as well. So that was really hard on those collectors, I think, when that happened, because, like you said, they lived vicariously through Peter Parker, and when that happened, it just was brutal. Especially the way she died, broken neck.
Yeah.
He was there, and he kind of helped cause it, and
because the force of the webbing catching her forced her neck back at such a speed as she was going.
And that's what would have happened. So you got another one?
I do.
All right, let's keep going. We started a few minutes late. Keep going until the Kraken pounds your door down.
Yeah, that's going to be happening soon. This one is I love this cover very much because of the colors and just look at the depth of it.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that one. I love that book. I have that copy.
Look at Ultron in this, and look at the energy that's coming out of his hands. Look how well it's
done. Like a Kirby crackle, and look at just the sheer evil on his face.
Yes. This is a very frightening looking character.
Yeah.
And it's one that, like, oh my God, it's like he looks like robotic skull type face. Yeah. And he's just drawn so well here. And it just looks like he's a real menacing character. And you got, of course, the great colors in the background and the yellows and all this stuff that makes it pop. Beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah. No, I love that cover. It's one that I'll always keep in my collection too. My next one is one that I don't get a lot of signatures, but when I saw him, I had to get it. It's Mike Zeck, and it's also one of my all-time favorite covers, and I think it's very classic because it has two of my favorite characters in it, and it's Captain America 286.
Oh, whoa, Deathlock.
Yeah, so it's got Deathlock, and then in his scope, you can see he's
Captain America.
He's aiming at Captain America, and this is the 3-issue arc that they kind of I think legitimized and really told a great story about Deathlock. This is the real Deathlock, Luther Manning. And I loved this book when it came out. This cover just blew me away.
Yeah, that's a great cover.
I love it. Just the detail on his face. And this is when Mike Zeck and I think it was John Beatty. Anyway, that inked for him, and this was sometimes you get a penciler and an inker that matched up perfectly together, like Terry Austin and John Byrne.
Yeah,
it's just perfect when that happens. But that's one of my favorites.
That's a great book.
Yeah. Cover, maybe not valuable, but to me is a classic.
Well, for my next book, it's a book that has some value, but I think a lot of people would agree it is a classic. And I don't think my words could do it justice. Oh,
I had a picture of that one. I only have the Fantasy Masterpiece. I don't have the real one.
Yeah, I purchased this a few years ago. My local comic book shop had it, and I said, this is definitely a book I want, and I just had to get it. It's in great shape. It's probably a 7.0.
Yeah.
But classic Rainbow Road cover where the Silver Surfer's coming out. You get a whole full body shot of Thor as he's about to try to fight off the Surfer, and the Surfer's going down. It's just...
I mean, you can see the velocity. It's just the movement in that cover is awesome.
And just look at the cosmic designs in the background. I mean, it's just the little things. It's not heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like you don't have a supernova in the background, but you have just enough that makes it stand out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. My next one it was a gift that Mike gave me. A little bit of joke about it, but it's also one that I think is just a great iconic cover. And well, I can't say too much more about it. It's Justice League 19.
Oh yeah,
And
that's right. I remember when Mike gave you that.
the one that Mike, he made a synthetic 10-0.
Yeah, I know you got a perfect copy
Yeah,
there.
I got a perfect copy here, but it is actually a very nice copy. I'd say at least an 8.85. But I just love this cover because how the heroes are getting stuck on, they're being banished to space. But then if you look closely, it's really Clark Kent and Barry Allen. All of them are down here, intermingled with the people.
Yeah, that's definitely a classic cover. What year did that come out, Patrick?
I don't know the exact year. 1964.
Okay.
So this is 55 years old. Great, great book.
And you got a 10.0.
Yeah. I love to. Adam just stays miniature. He used to be full size as Tom Palmer, but no, I'm going to stay miniature. Why not? Awesome.
Great book.
Because she's the only woman, they have to make Wonder Woman cry because back then women were the only ones that cried.
Yeah, and she's getting on a spaceship with all those guys.
That's gonna be a long trip for her.
Oh.
Right.
Here's another book that I think is another classic. It's from EC. Another book that I remember seeing when I was reading the reprints. I'm like, damn, what the hell's going on here? This looks creepy.
Oh.
Bondage cover, bigot cover, everything kind of cover.
Well, I got everything going for it. You got the hooded guy.
Classic Wally Wood. The story behind it, I forget the name of the story. I haven't cracked this book out yet, but I do remember the story behind it, and it was equally creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Equally creepy. It should have been in a horror, one of the horror titles, but they saved it for shock. Fantastic, and I love it the way they hold the torches up in the background, and you see the flame and all that stuff against the darkness.
Next one out here. This one, if you're a cover collector, this one set everyone, I imagine, when it came out, on fire because the character hadn't been around since the Golden Age, and this was kind of a test the water to see if people wanted them back. And Strange Tales 114. I got one of those Mylar covers on it, but it's when Captain America, not really, it really was the Acrobat, but let me take this out of this thing.
Now, how long does that predate Avengers 4?
I want to say 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, because this was November '63.
Okay.
So.
Wow, that must have been something, though. They must have, the collectors or anybody that had any sort of memory of Captain America must have shit themselves when they saw him on the cover.
Because there really was no warning. It just showed up on the newsstand, and it was so well received that.
Let's bring back the real Steve Rogers.
Yeah, let's bring back because that's what everyone wanted. And they tried to do it, I think, in the 50s. They kind of, then they retconned it to say, no, that really wasn't him.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. I think they tried to piggyback and make it seem like he was coming back to fight commies. So this is the book. So this came out in March. So it was 4 months afterwards. So sorry to take up 2 spots here, but this is
all right.
The real Steve Rogers came.
That's the real story. Let's say he lives again, and he got a nice grade too.
Yeah, I got 5.5 on it. This is one me and Mike had a little bit of fun with the community on. We pretended to rip the cover.
That's right.
I remember that video.
Yeah.
This is a great book. Actually, you and I think, were texting when I bought this book.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. When I got it. I got it from a guy who lived in Florida, and he was a musician, and he needed the money to go on the road. So he sold this and then Showcase 22. And I was late to dinner on Showcase 22. I tried to buy it too from him, and I was about 5 minutes too late.
You still got a great book.
I did. Totally happy, and he was happy that it was going with me, and knew I would never sell it. So anyway, so what's your next one?
Next one is a classic one by Steranko.
Oh,
it's classic for a couple of reasons, but obviously largely because of the cover art.
Oh.
It's Steranko always drew women very, very well. He drew very well to begin with, but I always liked the way he drew women. And this cover is so dynamic. Again, with the energy around Polaris, it really, almost like with the Ultron cover, it really stands out. But one of the big things about this that I really like is that bold new X-Men logo that is in your face.
Oh, totally.
And this logo, designed by Steranko, became the staple for the series up into this very day, more or less. They still borrow this type of style in some cases today, but this has gone on for almost 3 decades before they changed the title around.
And think of how much gets done with basically 2 colors on there in white.
Yeah, I know.
It's incredible how much goes on there.
And
it reminds me a little bit of Spider-Man 50s that way as well.
Yeah,
with the all red cover.
And he did. I think he did such a great job, and it's definitely a classic cover, not just to me, but I think to a lot of people.
No, I agree. Let me pull one of my next ones out here. I was too busy admiring. I didn't get prepared.
I got a few more before I got to get going before the little Kraken comes, or I got to attend to the Kraken anyway. I got to send them back in the ocean.
I would be remiss if I didn't have at least one Bernie Wrightson, and this is one of my favorite covers. It's Swamp Thing #4.
Oh, wow.
And it's just got so much coolness about it. He's coming up out of the muck, and then you have this weird kind of werewolf goat guy in the background. and again, there's our moon. These are kind of like lanterns, lit windows at night. But this Bernie Wrightson and this character, it's just perfect.
They're synonymous.
Yeah.
Bernie Wrightson and Swamp Thing, because those two were just made for each other.
Yeah. But I just love that cover. I think I still like 9 is still my favorite Swamp Thing cover. But
I don't remember 9. I have to see that one again. I
think it's the best Swamp Thing. And down in Charlotte, I was lucky enough. I was going through a box and I came across one, and it's Bernie Wrightson signature.
Wow, that's right. I remember that.
It was a complete accidental find.
Yeah.
And I showed it to the dealer. It was Leroy's booth.
And what did he say? Oh, well, let me scratch out that 25 and put
being the good dealer he is, he's like, that's a good find for you. And he sold to me for the price he had at Marktown. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I like him. I like Leroy.
Leroy's a good cat.
Now, here's another one that I think DrVonChilla would approve of. Of course, I'm going to EC again. Sorry, everybody. Because everyone just loves those speculation EC books. Oh, wait, no, they don't.
all EC books are.
Some of them have been spiking.
They totally have been.
That War Against Crime I just recently saw. Mine's a 4.5, I think. Well, 4.0 was recently sold for a little under $1,000. So, the suicide cover.
No, I don't know if I said this before. Doesn't it look like Donald Trump on the cover?
You're not the first person that said that to me.
Yeah.
Who else told me that?
But it's the facial expression as well.
Yeah. It does look. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching wish it were Donald Trump. But no, you're not the first person to tell me that. But still, classic cover. A lot of the crime suspense stories.
The lady in the background.
What's that?
The lady in the background, I think, is kind of lost in that sometimes.
Yeah, the whole thing is lost.
Yeah.
Because you take a look at the mirror, you find out it doesn't look like he's blowing his head off because it looks kind of weird. But then when you look in the mirror next to the lady, it is him.
Yeah. And didn't they try to say when they testified, well, that could be anyone's arm.
He tried to say everything under the sun. Hey, bullshit artist.
Well, this is also an EC book, but it's one of the reprints.
Oh, wow. The Mars Attacks.
And this guy is just so damn creepy looking.
Yeah.
And
That's.
I love how these kids they got their little dog and they're hiding out behind a rock. And I can imagine being a kid in the 50s and reading this and then putting yourself in this position, because obviously no one had gone to space yet. And they talked about it. And, later on you had Sputnik going around and, the Russians were in space. But this must have been just great as a kid to pick up on the stand and read this thing.
I have to get into those. I really do. But I have to finish my horror collection first. But those are distracting. I'm
a weird science and all the fantasy ones.
Weird fantasy?
With rocket ships and all that. I love those. I have several of them in here.
Some of them were just. Did you buy that at that store in Doylestown?
Yeah, I got this when we were in that funky little town that night.
Yeah, that Tales from the Crypt town.
Yes.
That we were at.
It felt like it was right out of it.
Out of Midnight Mess. I thought vampires were going to come get us. Another great Mr. Freeze.
I love Mr. Freeze.
I think you need a Batman 121.
No, he's not. That's not the good one. I hope everyone's enjoying this. I can't read this. No, we only got 15 people watching.
I guess they weren't enjoying. All right.
Well, we're way after too. We're
Yeah.
11 minutes after.
All right. Should I do one more and then we'll wrap it up?
Okay, I got 2 more and then we can wrap it up.
Okay. Well, then I got 2 more.
All right.
Classic cover right here. FF49.
Nice.
This is I think out of the 3, although 50 is pretty good. Out of the 3, I think this is the best of the 3. And that's what I mean by the 3, 48, 49, 50.
For sure. We talked about that in the video today.
Yeah, it has everybody on this cover. It's got all 4 all members of the Fantastic Four. It's got the Silver Surfer full blown, and it's got the menacing Galactus on the coming out of.
And I love the way Silver Surfer is kind of bobbing and weaving in it.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's got everything. It's just such a great cover. I love it.
And people just start. I mean, I hate to say people just started to realize it. Of course, people have always known this was a great cover, but it seems like now it's been getting a lot of traction.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's a cover that a lot of collectors know, and a lot of people. It's infamous. I love the TV show, and I always have growing up. It still reminds me of my grandparents' house. But this one is just campy and goofy, and I think
oh boy, I see.
Most collectors have to have one of these.
That's a very
it's the log one, and the look on their faces is look at these like damn right, son. Check that out. You know, it's perfect, and obviously it was done intentionally. There's no way this was an accident. You know?
This stuff that definitely is a classic cover.
It's a classic cover.
Hold my log, will you?
Yeah, hold my log. The log cover. It's got all kinds of horrible names, but it's one that I chased and I wanted to have. So
now, for my next one, I have to have this here because I'm on the cover.
Oh yes, I know which one you're going to pull out. Yep, it's a beauty.
Yes.
I think I like the red is my favorite part of that cover.
Yeah, the red really makes everything else pop. Red and yellow do a great job, but when you got the red and black, it's even better. Yeah. The Reaper, I think, it was said that this character was the inspiration for the Phantasm in the animated series, the Mask of the Phantasm.
I love that character.
They took elements of this character and, of course, other things to create the Phantasm, and a lot of the inspiration for that character came from the Reaper. Of course, not everything, because they are, in some aspects, drastically different, but very cool.
Yeah, excellent. Well, my last one, and it's the one for me that started it all as far as the universe goes, the universe in comics, that is. And it's been heavily swiped as well. It's beauty. And
yes.
Without this, the rest of it wouldn't have happened.
That's
and
right.
It's got everything going for it.
It does.
The aspect. It's got a giant monster dead center. It was a perfect bridge book between what Marvel Timely Atlas was doing at the time with monster books, and then to incorporate a team, which kind of was a bunch of misfit monsters themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think this is obviously one of the heavily swiped book as well, but just a great.
Yeah, it's an absolute
classic cover.
Yeah, and you got it from Scott.
I did, so that adds coolness to it. I got it from Scott Johnson, so it helped him get his AF-15, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Now, for my last one, I've said this before, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the artist, but I'm not foolish enough to say that this cover is not a classic, even for me.
Oh, yep. No,
talk about a simple cover with basic colors, but still memorable. Never mind the the whole Kingpin and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just a bonus. It really is. But I think it's this cover and the story behind it, Spider-Man No More, really made this an instant classic for any collector. And of course, if you're a big Romita fan, this is a big one for you too.
Yeah, no, that is we talked about earlier how much gets done with basically one color.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah. So. Well, everybody, for those of you that stuck with us, we went a little over because we started about a minute or two late. We appreciate it very much.
I think we did all right without John helping us.
Yeah, we did good. We did good.
Visit whenever John's feeling up to it. I'm sure we could hopefully Nick will return to us. That would be fun to have Nick, and he's obviously a big cover collector.
Well, he just made a new video.
Yeah, yep.
So
and it's actually new, so it's not.
Yeah, it's new
because he has so much content. He's like Kirby of YouTube. He can just crank YouTube, content out, a lot. So for those of you who haven't seen it, go out and check it out. Check out Anthony's new video. I'm going to be watching that this evening, and then I'm going to finish editing Mike in my video, and that should be up later tonight or first thing in the morning. It's a great box of CGC stuff that Mike got in. It was a lot of fun. So, anything else, Anthony? Anything to look forward to?
I know. I got to attend to the Kraken. So,
all right. I got a bunch of other stuff going. I've been taking footage of the comic area as construction progresses. So I'll edit that all together and have a big unveiling. Maybe on a Wednesday night. Maybe I'll do that. We'll have the first time in the new comic area down there. So
very cool.
All right. Well, until next week, everybody. Thanks for hanging in with us. Life, liberty, pursuit of comics. Keep reading.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.